Hi there, folks. Welcome to the program. This, of course, is Stinchfield, the podcast. All right, I have been seeing a lot about whether or not we walked on the moon. This conspiracy theory that in 1969, Neil Armstrong and crew never set foot on the moon, that it was a Hollywood soundstage. Even to the point that, what's his name, Stanley Kubrick, I think, was the one who orchestrated the videoing of all of this. I don't know if any of this is true. And so what I'm going to do is something most conservative talk show hosts don't do. Usually I take a definitive position on everything, and I pride myself on that. I'm not going to do that today. I'm going to go through the evidence that shows we didn't walk on the moon, but I'm going to give you some evidence that shows we did, and then let you decide. But I will say this. There's a lot of evidence that raises a lot of questions for me thinking about whether or not we walked on the moon or not. All right? So remember this moment.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
So that, folks, is perfect communication. Radio, absolutely the best. Now remember, this is 1969. The moon is 200,000+ miles away from Earth. And when I drive to my gym in the middle of Dallas at the corner of Mockingbird and 75, my cell phone drops out. So in 2025, you're telling me that I lose cell phone signal in the middle of Dallas, like the fourth largest city in the country. And in 1969, they have perfect communications to the moon, to the point where Richard Nixon used a telephone to call the astronauts. Hard for me to believe, seeing that we can't get that. That's just one of the pieces of evidence to me that really stands out, that I'm not really absolutely sure that this happened. But there's some other evidence that it did. Like there's apparently a laser reflective material that we use and continue to use to bounce a laser off the moon to measure distances. And that piece of equipment is still on the moon and still being used today. Somebody had to put it there. Unless it wasn't in 1969, that got put at a later mission. One of the big things is, why didn't we ever go back? Well, we did 5 times, allegedly. So these are the things we're going to go through today as Stinchfield gets started here. But before we get into this program, I want to tell you about my friends over at Colonial Metals Group. Folks, we got a lot of gold being moved into the United States. People are taking notice of gold. People are realizing this is where you want to go right now to put your money. It is a portfolio protection maneuver as we face $36 trillion in debt. Yes, gold made record highs recently, but it continues to make record highs. And I would argue, if you go back all the way for the last few decades, back to probably the beginning of time, gold continues to make record highs. Gold goes up for a reason, because it is a safe haven. It is limited, and it provides you a place to put your money in a 401k or IRA, and Colonial Metals can help you do that. No money out of pocket, to protect your assets and that nest egg you work so hard for. So I get a lot of gold companies coming to me. Colonial Metals, I trust them. I know these guys personally. I urge you to check them out. Freegoldguide.com is the website. Freegoldguide.com. 800-458-7356. 800-458-7356. Sorry about that. Hold on. 800-458-7356. That's the number to call them. Freegoldguide.com. Now, folks, let's get the party started.
Uncensored and unapologetic. This is Stinchfield. Here's your host, Grant Stinchfield.
All right, welcome, folks. It is great to be along with you today. So, again, I want to go through this. Was the moon landing a big, giant hoax? I see evidence that it could have been. I really do. And I look at people I trust. Now, I'm going to start with 2 clips from Joe Rogan, because I know many of you trust Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan has not been a right-wing conspiracy theorist since the beginning of time. He's not Alex Jones. I'm not going to play you him, even though Alex Jones does some pretty darn good work. But I want to play this as straight as possible, okay? So you can see what I'm assessing when it comes to whether or not we landed on the moon. First clip from Joe Rogan. Let's go.
press conference from 1969 when they returned from the moon is one of the most cryptic, weird things you'll ever see. These guys look like they just stole something and they're being questioned. I've never seen a video where people look like they're more full of shit than that video of the press conference from 1969. It's weird, man. It's weird. They're like fidgety and looking nervous, like they're getting away
so
with something.
So they didn't do it then?
They might have done it. They might have been forced to say some things that they didn't want to say, and that could be part of it.
Absolutely.
You know, they could have done it. But there's a lot of weirdness with the moon landing.
Mm-hmm.
It's if you wanted to have like a conspiracy that to wrap your head around that's exciting, it's one of the best ones.
Really, but who benefits from it?
Well, who benefits from it? It's an easy question. The United States does. Remember, we were in a Cold War with Russia. And this is really the beginning, moving into the depths of the Cold War. And the space race was really looked at as whoever would win the space race would win the Cold War. And so that's Nixon and crew saying, hey, we got to get to the moon first. So were they lying to us about it? Was this a military psyop? Not to trick the American people and give us lots of confidence, by the way. You know, I was born in 1969, but I remember talking to like my parents about this, people that are older than me about this. This was like the greatest patriotic event, giving faith in America event, really bringing the nation together. Maybe it was all a psyop.
They were just lying to people left and right back then.
That's government, though.
Yeah, but even more so then because it was unchecked. There was no media.
Social media.
Yeah, there's nothing that would expose them for this. And this stuff, they would air it on TV once in 1969. You never see it again unless you watched it on film. There's no YouTube where you can go back and watch the astronauts on trampolines video.
The flat Earth thing is ridiculous.
Watch this. And like their feet are hidden. Look at this. Watch these guys bounce up in the air. It's like they're on some sort of wire, like they're being yanked up into the air.
Oh, yeah.
Like, what the fuck are they doing? And they're playing, like falling down, and it's very weird. But it could have been that they were really on the moon, and these guys were fucking cowboys and yahoos.
Now, think about this, though. They're playing on the moon, and we've all seen that video doing kangaroo hops, bunny hops, or whatever you want to call it, and they're jumping, and then they're falling down, and they're rolling. It's minus 200,000 degrees, I believe, is what it is. No, excuse me. Minus 200 degrees, minus 200,000 degrees. That would be a lot. 200,000 miles is what it is to the moon, plus 240-something thousand miles. Minus 200 degrees on the moon. You're in an outfit in 1969 where technology was not that great. Where if that outfit rips, comes apart, you're dead, man, in a second. You think you're going to be rolling around making snow angels on the face of the moon when it's minus 200 degrees? I don't know. To me, that seems a little crazy.
And they wanted to bounce around. But there's videos of the flag moving in a non-existent breeze, which is weird, too. And they try to make some logical explanations for why the flag could be moving in a vacuum, and some of it makes sense, but some of it doesn't. Like the wires one is weird. If you watch them fall down, like go to that one right there, Jamie. It might not have been real footage. What they might have done is use some test footage, like right there, Jamie, right there. Let it go. Like homeboy falls down, and then it looks like he gets yanked back up. Look at this. Whoops.
Oh, he did not. That's like, not him standing up.
Yeah, what is this?
Here, I'll play it again. Watch.
Jamie, right there. Let it go. Like homeboy falls down, and then it looks like he gets yanked back up. Look at this. Whoops.
Oh, he did not. That's
like,
not him standing up.
These are the kind of things that has everybody asking questions about this. So you've got 3 astronauts who immediately quit after this so-called moon landing, after the moon landing. I don't want to call it so-called because I'm not saying it didn't happen, but I'm also not saying it did. And I think what COVID taught me, now, I always had great distrust in the government. I haven't told a lot of people, but I had some family issues back when I was younger with the government going after people that I loved. And the government did some very devious things along the way, including saying some very horrible things to me along the way. And it solidified a distrust in the government all the way back to when I was 11, 12 years old that I have today. Then that COVID happened, and we knew what I knew all along. I've been telling people was that the government was willing to lie to you. I think this is another example of it. So Joe Rogan seems to be hot on this story because he continues. Now, he talked about the flag situation. So there's this theory that there's no air on the moon. And since there's no air on the moon, you can't have breezes that are blowing the flag back and forth. But there are. Well, apparently there are, because the flag waves. Now, I don't know how that happens on the moon. Here's Joe Rogan again.
If you watch Apollo 11 when they were moving around on the surface of the moon, it's just like they're moving in slow motion. Have you seen it?
I've not. I know. I had never gotten to the moon thing.
Watch these guys bounce up in the air. It's like they're on some sort of wire, like they're being yanked up into the air.
Oh yeah.
Like, what the fuck are they doing? And they're playing, like falling down, and it's very weird.
Well, why does the flag look so still there?
Well, the flag had a wire, first of all, on the top of it that stiffened it up to make it. But there's videos of the flag moving in a non-existent breeze. Right there, Jamie. Right there. Let it go. Like, homeboy falls down, and then it looks like he gets yanked back up. Look at this.
Oh, he did not. That's
Like,
not
what is
him
that?
standing up. Standing up.
Yeah, what is this?
That's not
Look.
him standing up. You can't stand up like that.
Right, but you're on the moon. Okay,
No,
so you realize you're in
no.
1/6 Earth's gravity.
But there was nothing to make him go like this.
Exactly.
Right? You can't get
Right.
up. You can't look at. There's nothing on the ground. How's he going to get the
He's
momentum?
getting
to go?
yanked up. Like he would have super abs. He would have to be like a
No,
break
you
dancer.
can't because. Okay, maybe a break.
It's worth playing that again. You saw the flag move a little bit. Now, the flag could move if you were shaking the pole. And that's been proven in some scientific experiments where they took air out of a box and they moved the box gently that the flag is held to. And the flag does move. It looks like it's waving in the air, which would be the same situation as on Earth. So the flag situation to me is not the biggest piece of evidence. Now, you also have, we'll talk about this, shadows going the wrong direction. This doesn't make sense to me. If you have the sun and that's your sole source of light, then how do you have shadows going different directions? When you stand there, the shadow goes one way. Anybody that's a golfer knows, they know the pin on the golf course goes one way. And on every hole, the shadow's going the same way with the flagpole or the flag pin is sending the shadow. The sun is sending the shadow. So how do you have shadows going different directions? Now, people have said, well, weren't there lights on the lunar lander? Well, maybe, but there's other areas where they're not near the lunar lander, and it appears to be sunlight that's making the shadows. We'll talk about that in just a minute. But before we do, let me tell you about my friends over at get21now.com. And oh, by the way, there's also video of them, which is widely circulated, of them denying of them, Buzz Aldrin, denying that the moon landing happened. He says it didn't happen. It didn't happen. Now I'm actually going to debunk that video, kind of, which makes it even more mysterious. We'll do that in a second here. But again, folks, I want to tell you about my friends at get20now.com. That's get20now.com. Up to 20% monthly income. That's annualized interest on your investment paid out monthly. This is about Bitcoin mining, investing in an industrialized mining system. They've got warehouses across the country. This is a company called NFN8. I have invested with them. They have lived up to their promises to me. I get my money direct deposited in my account, I think like the 25th of every month. It'll be different for everybody. But like clockwork, this money's direct deposited. This is what I call mailbox money. I don't worry about it. 20% on my money. I see what the stock market's doing right now. I would take 20% all day long, which is why I am now considering upping my investment with them because they lived up to their promises with me. NFN8 is the name of the company. Get20now.com. Fill out the form. They'll give you a call. My man Corey is one of the leaders of this company. He'll call you directly. Right? You're not going to get some random sales guy. You're going to get a call from the leaders of this. And I urge you, call them back, or even better, take the call. Get20now.com, get20now.com. No headache, cash flow, mailbox money, up to 20% annualized interest on your investment paid monthly. You cannot beat that. Get20now.com. All right, so I told you that Buzz Aldrin apparently has made numerous statements that the moon landing never happened. And they take these clips and they break them down in a small way where it sure sounds like that's what he's saying. I'm going to play you the clip that's floating around on social media. And then I'll play you the full clips so you can get context in all of this, okay? Because I don't think he's saying we didn't land on the moon, except for one time with Conan O'Brien. I think he is. So again, more controversy, more mystery. This is the social media clip that's floating around.
Moment of the journey.
Scariest. It didn't happen. It could have been scary. Circuit breaker.
Why has nobody been to the moon in such a long time?
That's not an 8-year-old's question. That's my question. I want to know, but I think I know. Because we didn't go there, and that's the way it happened. And if it didn't happen, it's nice to know why it didn't happen, so in the future, if we want to keep doing something, we need to know why something.
Fascinating. I remember very clearly, I think anybody who was alive at the time does, I remember my parents waking me up and we went down and we watched you guys land on the moon.
No,
which
you
was
didn't. No, you didn't.
What?
Because there wasn't any television. There wasn't anybody taking a picture. You watched animation. So you associated what you saw with...
I have very hazy memories.
Yeah, I know.
Well, no.
So that, folks, is the clip that's floating around on social media. You looked at it, you're like, wait a second. Buzz Aldrin answers one young lady. She says, what was the scariest moment? Another was scary. It didn't happen. Scariest moment didn't happen. Then another, why didn't why didn't we go back? Well, because we never went, he says. Well, wait, what? Oh, we need to figure out why we didn't go back. Well, they did go back 5 times, which is odd. Between 69, I believe 72, they did go back to the moon, allegedly. And then there's that clip with Conan O'Brien. That's the weirdest one of all, because you play that one, he still doesn't explain what he means by not going there, which then makes me think maybe he didn't go there. But if you play the entire clip, see, social media doesn't do that. They in the first clip, okay, the first one, it becomes clear that he says the scariest thing didn't happen, the circuit breaker, that somehow the circuit breaker was going to pop. So let me play this in its entirety and you can see the difference.
What was the scariest moment of the journey?
Scariest. It didn't happen. It could have been scary. Circuit breaker.
Circuit breaker, he says. Now, if you cut it right there or right before circuit breaker, you say it didn't happen. Scariest moment, well, it's not scary, it didn't happen. That's not what he's saying. So.
The circuit breaker in the plane?
Oh, I'm glad somebody helps me. We came back inside after kicking up dust and picking up some rocks. And, of course, we had to send them up the ladder because that'd be hazardous carrying a big rock box up the ladder. So we thought of that ahead of time. And we had a clothesline on a pulley so we could send that down. I sent the camera down to Neil so he could take my picture getting on down there. But then it was there so we could hook the rock box on there. That's why I got in first.
Now, there you can see he's clearly talking about being on the moon with a rock box, and the pulley said we didn't want to carry the rock. To me, though, I don't like, my gut feeling is this is what you're talking about, running around kicking up dust on the moon and carrying rocks up the ladder. The ladder was like 5 freaking steps, man. You can hand rocks up the ladder. I don't know. I ought to have the body language guy, Greg Hartley, do body language on this clip. That would be interesting to see. So that's that clip. Then there's this clip with the young girl. It says, why didn't we go back?
Why has nobody been to the moon in such a long time?
That's not an 8-year-old's question. That's my question. I want to know, but I think I know. Because we didn't go there, and that's the way it happened. And if it didn't happen, it's nice to know why it didn't happen. So
why haven't we been back? Because we didn't go there. So if you cut it there, and that's where everybody cuts it on social media, you're like, we didn't go to the moon? What are you talking about, Buzz? Unless he's losing his mind here. And these videos are pretty old. I don't think he's still alive. I don't know. I'm sorry, Buzz, if you are. But now let me play it out for you. And then you'll see he clarifies himself because we didn't go back because we didn't go back. That's his answer. Well, we didn't because we didn't. And this is what people say all the time, that we lost the technology somehow. From 1972 to present day, we don't have the technology to go back to the moon.
in the future, if we want to keep doing something, we need to know why something stopped in the past that we wanted to keep it going. Money is a good thing. If you want to buy new things, new rockets, instead of keep doing the same thing over, then it's going to cost more money. And other things need more money too. So having achieved what the president wanted us to do, and then what thousands, millions of people in America, and millions of people around the world.
All right, he rambles on, but there you can see what he's saying is, well, we achieved going to the moon, and the president wanted us to, and America wanted us to, but we haven't done it now because money, and we're spending it on other things. Okay, fair enough assessment. He is right. It is very, very, very expensive. I wish somebody would have asked him, why did you resign? Why were you acting all weird during that press conference, as we showed you originally? And then there's video of the takeoff and landing, which I don't know how there's video outside from the takeoff and landing, 200 degrees, and you got a remote control camera that's watching the thing lift off. I'm not sure how that happens. And then there's this clip on Conan O'Brien. This is the weirdest one because this one he doesn't really ever clarify. He basically just says we didn't go.
This is fascinating. I remember very clearly, I think anybody who was alive at the time does. I remember my parents waking me up and we went down and we watched you guys land on the moon.
No,
which
you
was
didn't. No, you didn't.
What?
Because there wasn't any television. There wasn't anybody taking a picture. You watched animation. See, you associated what you saw with...
I have very hazy memories.
Yeah, I know.
Well, no, but what we saw was we all were gathered around the old curved top radio and listened.
Talking about how many feet we were going to the left and right, and then I said, contact light, engine stop.
It was
and a few
exciting.
other things, and then Neil said, Houston, Tranquility Base, the Eagle has landed. Man, how about that?
That was very exciting.
Not a bad line.
Yeah. This was. So were you
So a lot of people there say not a bad lie, but that's not what he says. I've played it back over and over again. Not a bad line is what he says. Was it scripted?
conscious about all the, I mean, the entire Earth, is watching and listening to everything that you guys do. Were you self-conscious at all about what am I going to say? What if I say something that's kind of stupid? It's in the history books forever, like, I want a cookie, or, you know.
You got it. You got it.
You're worried then.
We were focused. I was afraid that Neil might say, hey, you better go out first and, think up a couple of lines to say when you step on the moon.
Right. So that's a huge responsibility.
You bet, right.
You were not the first man to walk on the moon, but you've actually talked about this. You were the first man to relieve himself on the moon. Is that true?
That is correct.
That is correct.
Well, no.
This is... When I get to the...
But not on the moon. You don't want to...
Yeah, you didn't unzip.
You do not want to unzip.
Right,
no,
right. That would be stupid.
But we got a little device that...
I don't want to know about the device.
All right, already har. So, it's a little weird answer in the beginning. It didn't happen, and it's just bizarre, right? So then I see this documentary about I see this documentary about the moon landing, and it was pretty interesting, basically calling into question it is a hoax. Let me roll a little bit of it for you.
And what of the photographs? What do they tell us? On 3 separate occasions, our office asked NASA's Public Relations Department for every single picture of an astronaut on the surface of the moon, just during the maiden voyage of Apollo 11. Many duplicates were sent. In all, fewer than 20 pictures were found, including first-hand investigation on site at the agency's vaulted archives. Quite surprising, considering the historical significance of the event. These very photographs are the same ones circulated year after year on anniversary commemorations. It is estimated that in just the first 60 minutes on the moon, motivated by the tenuous nature of the circumstances, many more exposures could have been expediently taken. Also surprising is the scarcity of photographs of the mission's chief pioneer, Neil Armstrong. The greatest achievement in human history, and of the man whose first step echoed around the world, dawning a new age of scientific enlightenment, there is only one full-body picture of him on the moon, besides this ghostly reflection. This one, taken by an automatic camera mounted on the side of the lunar module. Perhaps he feared liability, should the whole conundrum later become unraveled. Perhaps he has forgotten that he attested to the authenticity of the event with his signature on this plaque engraved by the federal government. In fact, in the more than 30 years since the event, aside from NASA's initial press conference and the occasional brief anniversary remarks where few questions were permitted, he has never given one on-camera interview to anyone, ever. From an analytical standpoint, photographic anomalies have to be sought out with an understanding of lighting and shadows. The most straightforward is simple. When objects are lit solely by the sun, as all the scenes on the moon were said to be, after all, lighting equipment was not only impractical, it was unnecessary in bright sunlight, then all shadows, regardless of the landscape, will run parallel with one another and never intersect, as shown by this example. In these seldom-seen photographs, obtained from a rarely used auxiliary NASA archival site, it is clear that these scenes were lit with artificial light. These shadows, which are cast at different angles, are evidence that a second light source is being used. In addition, the sun would not cause an isolated hotspot like this, only an artificial light would. Again, intersecting shadows and another hotspot. And again. And again. It is simply impossible for this picture to have been taken with sunlight on the...
So you see that rock right there? That rock up in the top right corner. People talk about that rock all the time, that was the shadow rock. As you can see, the shadow from the astronaut compared to the shadow from the rock are going two completely different directions.
Moon. Here, the shadows are shown to be as black as pitch. And yet here, completely in a shadow, the astronaut is lit up like a Christmas tree. How can this be? Or this, on the shadow side of the lunar module. In this magnification of an Apollo photograph, a rock, very likely a papier-mâché prop because of the crease here, is categorized with the letter C. In later releases of the same picture, the letter is gone, probably airbrushed out. Here a crosshair, which was burned directly into the image from the film plate, and thus should always appear on top of the objects in the photograph, appears behind the object in this scene, clearly revealing a composite of two pictures into one. Someone apparently forgot to create a burn crater underneath the lunar module's 10,000-pound thrust engine, despite the fact that during ground tests there was a real concern for the vehicle falling into the hole the engine created as it descended. Here is a Norman Rockwell depiction drawn just 2 years earlier based on the latest specifications and scientific data. In these enlargements, it looks as though the lunar module was simply placed there. Not even one speck of moon dust on the landing pod. As a result, all subsequent flights had to have the same discrepancy, which was explained away by the effect of no atmosphere. And what?
So all of this is fascinating, right? I mean, I'm looking at it, I'm like, wow. I mean, I don't doubt the makers of this documentary that they actually did use the Freedom of Information request to get the pictures from NASA. And there's only 20 of the 5,000. There's only 20 of the same pictures. All of them were duplicates. What is going on? Now, Matt Walsh, who I have great respect for, just like I do for Joe Rogan, Matt Walsh tries to debunk what I'm painting a picture of here, what the documentary is painting a picture of here. And we're going to hear from Matt Walsh, and I'll play a little bit more of this documentary as well. But as you can imagine, it's all quite interesting. Is it raising questions in your mind? Put a comment in. Make sure you like the video, by the way. Subscribe to the channel if you're watching on Rumble or get it wherever you're watching, Facebook. Please subscribe to the channel. But comment. I want to know what you think. I should do this on the Real America's Voice show, too, by the way. Hey, before I get back to this, I want to tell you about Energized Health. My friends over there are so great. EnergizedHealth.com/Grant. EnergizedHealth.com/Grant. This is about cellular hydration. It's about taking your life back. It's about doing something to not just shed the weight that you want to lose, okay? And I don't say shed. I want to shed fat, okay? Because it's not about shedding weight. It's about shedding fat. I don't want to lose muscle mass. I want to lose fat. With this program, you'll actually gain muscle mass and you'll lose fat. That's the best. My cholesterol went down on this program. My testosterone went up on this program. My hydration levels went up, and that's the key. The secret is in the science of all of this and the simplicity of it, by the way. EnergizedHealth.com/Grant. Here's the deal. In 2 weeks, I lost 15 pounds on this. It's an 88-day protocol. Super easy. And I mean it. It's easy. I changed the way I eat around. I didn't even change much of what I eat. Just changed the way I eat. I changed the way I work out a little bit, and it wasn't a hard workout either. Very, very easy. People in their 80s could do this. 90s could do this. EnergizedHealth.com/Grant. If you want to look like this, I'm 56 years old. Look at this. All right, I'm proud of this. 56 years old. I owe a lot of it to EnergizedHealth.com/Grant. Pay them a visit. All right, so I got more of that documentary, but maybe it would be good to tell the other side now, right? Because this is Matt Walsh who plays something else out here.
The moon landing, on the other hand, has reams and reams and reams of evidence. There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of photos and videos from the surface, interviews with the astronauts who went there, footage from other lunar probes that have gone to the moon or orbited it. There's even a laser reflector that was left on the surface. You can bounce a laser off of it today. This is a real experiment that can be conducted right now today to confirm that the reflector was left there. Now, it'll take much more sophisticated equipment than the average person has laying around, but many people with the equipment have done the experiment, because it measures the distance between the Earth and the moon at any given time, and have confirmed this. Are they all in on it too? Has the conspiracy grown even larger now? Now, if all of this is not enough to believe that we landed on the moon, then fine. But that means you also have to deny pretty much every historical event that has ever occurred. There is more direct evidence of the moon landing than there is of almost any event that happened prior to the mid-20th century. We have more direct evidence of the moon landing than we do that George Washington existed. And yet, if I claim that George Washington's existence was a hoax, you would expect me to present extremely compelling, direct, positive evidence of the hoax.
All right. He raises, I think, maybe the number one reason why I think we could have landed on the moon. The number one reason why I think we could have landed on the moon is because we haven't had a whistleblower. Do you know what the chances are of not having a whistleblower for how many people would have had to have been in on the hoax? So you've got Department of Defense. You've got NASA. You've got hundreds of employees at both, if not thousands. If it was a soundstage, you have all of the grips, all of the lighting people, all of the cameramen and women. You've got the prop makers. You have all of these people that would have had to have stayed quiet all of these years. Again, I'm 56 years old. 1969. This is 56 years ago. I don't think anybody would stay quiet. You'd have to have the astronauts that wouldn't say. Now, Matt Walsh said, oh, you got the astronauts who've given interviews. Well, we heard that one of the astronauts, Neil Armstrong, wouldn't give an interview. And in fact, this very odd piece of evidence where he refuses to swear on the Bible that he was there. What's the big deal about putting your hand on the Bible and saying, yes, I was there?
Will you put your left hand on the Bible and swear to God that you walked on the moon?
Gentlemen. Mr. Seibel.
Yes? If you really walked on the moon, why would you not do that? So why don't you just put the into the record in the argument and put your hand on the Bible, swear to God you walked on the moon?
Mr. Seibel, knowing you, that's probably a fake Bible.
Really? Well, no, it's a real Bible. You have the opportunity to have $5,000.
The meeting is not open.
Well, you have $5,000 cash. You can give it to charity if you swear on the Bible that you walked on the moon.
Please
I have the
give it to
tape.
charity. It'd be fine.
Why don't you swear to? Why not? Why won't you do it? So why don't you put your hand on the Bible and swear to God that you walked on the moon?
Mr. Seibel has made a fool of himself in front of the world. Mr. Seibel, you do not deserve answers.
Actually convinced of his own words.
The entire program, it's a beginning of a new age.
Does that look confident to you? No. That goes back to the news conference that Joe Rogan was talking about. Then you have the guy asking Neil Armstrong to put his hand on the Bible and swear you walked on the moon, and he won't do it. But it doesn't make any sense. He's offered $5,000 to do it. If it was me, I don't know. Maybe I would have winked at God. I would have said, hey, I'm going to cross my fingers. I'll take the $5,000. Old Stinchfield walked on the moon. Thanks for my $5,000. Ha, ha, ha. Fingers crossed. That's what I would have done. No. Look, if he walked on the moon, why wouldn't you just put your hand on the Bible? I don't know. That's weird to me that he didn't. It's got to be weird to you. So again, I go back to this documentary, which I thought was literally fascinating.
About stars. On the moon, with no atmosphere, they must have been quite a sight to behold.
All right, so you see what she's now saying. Where are the stars? This is another big piece of what the hoaxers, the people, the conspiracy theorists say, is that you've got the moon, you don't have any stars, and the stars would be so bright on the moon because there's no light pollution whatsoever. Where are the stars?
Yet there is seldom any mention of them, if ever, by any of the astronauts on any of the missions. Undoubtedly, creating a mural with all the constellations properly placed in the sky would have been virtually impossible to create accurately, much less realistically. A competent amateur astronomer would have been able to call attention to the slightest error in measurement. The answer? Not to talk about the stars. Ever.
So that's interesting. So what she's saying is, if it's a soundstage and there's no stars, especially in 1969, I think today, you got those beautiful planetariums. You could somehow broadcast it off the roof and make it look like it. But to an amateur astronomer, if it's off just the littlest bit, then you're going to be busted. So she says, don't ever talk about the stars and just don't put any stars in there and they can't bust you.
In their post-flight press conference, it was the only question to which Neil Armstrong responded with an absence of memory.
When you looked up at the sky, could you actually see the stars and the solar corona in spite of the glare?
We were never able to see stars from the lunar surface or on the daylight side of the moon by eye without looking through the optics. I don't recall during the period of time that we were photographing the solar corona what stars we could see. I don't remember seeing any.
Years later, though, Michael Collins would remember seeing the elusive stars and wrote about them in Expeditions to the Moon. It seems his memory improved the older he got. Why don't stars appear in any of the photographs? simply because the proper, mostly closed exposure setting for the camera's iris, set that way to compensate for the bright sunlight on the moon's surface, completely diminished the faintness of relatively distant specks of diminutive light. This answer is true. It does not, however, explain why they never took any pictures of the stars by themselves, with an exposure setting perfect for them. While they took 3 automobiles to the moon, they never took a photographic telescope. Had they done so, they would have been able to see farther into the universe than had ever before been realized.
All right, so this brings up another point of mine. So sometimes when I wonder, like, Elon Musk just went and picked up these astronauts from the space station. I believe it was 850 miles to get to the space station from where they were taking off from. I mean, I think it's only like 200 miles up off the Earth, but from where they were taking off from, it was 850 miles. This was touted as one of the greatest feats in decades because we had never traveled that far in space since the lunar missions. Now, you know how far the moon is? 240,000 miles, something like that. 240,000 miles, and they're saying this is the greatest feat ever, that we traveled 850 miles to go to the space station. They went 200 and something thousand miles to the moon. And oh, by the way, they just happened to bring a dune buggy with them. On that rocket, in that little ship, they had a dune buggy? Nobody has really given me a great answer of how they got the dune buggy on the surface, but they're driving around the dune buggy. And I think they brought some golf clubs, too. There's some pictures of them playing golf. Now, if you're taking a rocket to the moon and you know weight is so important and all these things, I understand you might want a buggy to drive around. Fine. You're going to bring golf clubs? I don't know, unless they were just pretending with whatever they had. But the dune buggy thing is, I'm very skeptical on that part of this.
If they had taken a telescope and were not actually on the moon, they would have had to concoct undiscovered galaxies that might one day prove to be non-existent. The cost of the 3 moon rovers in 21st century currency? Nearly $60 million each.
Hold on a second. $60 million for what looks like a Lego vehicle. It has less parts than a Jeep. And it's $60 million in today's dollars. Come on. And how did this thing fit on the lunar lander?
Had fewer parts than a Jeep. Where was all this money going? Then there's the flag, blowing in the wind, at least twice, on the atmosphereless moon. We can only guess that most of the missions were staged inside for fear of possible aerial or satellite reconnaissance from an unfriendly nation. The backpacks, designed for 1/6 gravity, must have had the cooling systems removed to allow for movement without falling over. With very near and hot studio lighting, that left one hot astronaut inside. Assuming that it was the astronauts inside after all, their faces were always covered. The necessary mammoth amounts of air conditioning were probably responsible for the air current. Here the editor cuts to a still shot of the flag.
Look, that's a crazy shot of the blowing. I haven't seen that shot of the flag blowing around like that. There's no atmosphere on the moon. There's no air. And if you have no air, there's nothing to blow. So there's no wind, right? That thing was blowing around a lot. That to me, again, question. Got big questions.
Just as the effect becomes noticeable. Here it is unchecked. This rare clip, attained decades ago, was never re-released with the inevitable increase in experience and scrutiny. To demonstrate 1/6 gravity, a bouncy, floaty feel to the astronauts' movements would be similarly achieved with relative simplicity. Slow motion. You are viewing the scenes as they aired more than 30 years ago. Now let's look at them with the speed doubled. It becomes discernible that they are, in fact, in Earth's gravity, and are no more leaving the ground than they would on Earth. It is clear from these rarely seen colour television pictures that the crew of Apollo 11 brought a high-resolution colour video camera with them on their mission. Yet the only pictures broadcast live from the moon's surface were these from a low-definition black and white camera. In fact, the networks complained because in addition to this, they were forced to shoot the images, second generation, off of a projection TV of the technology of 30 years ago, and were not even allowed to take a direct feed, which further degraded the quality and clarity of the images. Perhaps this was precisely what NASA and the federal government had in mind. After all, it was a first, regardless of where they were. Better to open up their debut mission with fuzzy pictures and numerous blackouts, rather than show too much revealing detail of a false scene that was yet unproven.
All right, so, look, a lot of evidence, to me, that's at least credible. Now, there are those that are label me now a conspiracy theorist for looking at this. Look, I just don't have a lot of faith in government. I see now, going all the way back decades, I didn't have a lot of faith in government. I wouldn't put it past our government to try to pull a psyop like this, especially for the military aspects of this, to let Russia really be afraid of what the United States was doing. So I could see us doing this. Now, I'm not telling you we didn't go to the moon. I'm just telling you these are very interesting questions. So, again, people ask, why didn't we go back? We did 5 times, allegedly. Nobody talks about that. You heard Matt Walsh talk about this reflective piece of equipment on the moon that is used. I think the biggest piece of evidence is that there was no whistleblower that says we didn't go. There's nobody has come forward and said, I was there, I was on the soundstage, I took pictures, we were in Hollywood. Nobody's ever done that. And with hundreds and hundreds of people involved in this, you would have think there would have been a leaker. Now, as far as technology, because people say, well, geez, the technology just went away. Think about supersonic jets. We had the Concorde, remember? I want to say it goes back to when I was a child, the Concorde. Concorde could fly supersonic speeds from New York to London. I thought in a few years, a decade maybe, that we'd have supersonic jets flying all over the world. And in fact, we did away with supersonic jets. Jet airplane travel today is not much different than it was in the 1950s. Maybe more fuel efficient with the engines, but it doesn't get you there any real quicker. Pretty sad, actually. And the inside of the airplanes have gotten worse, at least more cramped. So the technology thing, you know, maybe I could understand that as well. There's this portion, though. This is a guy who worked on the Apollo rockets. He is very skeptical of this. I'm going to play you this from another documentary I pulled. And this is this Apollo rocket engineer who, after watching this all go down, says, I don't think it happened.
Bill Casing was an analyst and engineer at Rocketdyne, the company that designed the Apollo rockets.
There were many problems that evolved during the 60s that led people to believe that we're never going to make it to the moon.
Three decades ago, when the world watched Apollo's lunar landings, Bill Casing was watching too. But what he saw on television, combined with his experiences at Rocketdyne, made him a skeptic.
The whole thing then seemed phony to me. I think it was an intuitive feeling that what was being shown was not real.
Do you know what's amazing? If you look down, this was on Fox, okay? So this aired on mainstream television, this documentary. Do you know I saw some statistics that 20% of the American population believe we didn't actually go to the moon? For a wild conspiracy to call into question one of the most iconic events in American history, for 20% of the people to not believe it, there's something to that, okay? 20% of the public are not idiots. Maybe they're awake to what's going on.
As he studied the footage more closely, he was shocked to find several inconsistencies. Casing observed that despite the clarity of deep space, the stars were missing from the black lunar sky. He saw the American flag waving, even though there is no air on the moon. And he discovered that there was no blast crater beneath the lunar lander, where its powerful rocket engine had fired. This evidence convinced Casing that we never sent a man to the moon. But NASA dismisses these charges.
There are always going to be people who believe some outlandish theories, and the notion that we somehow were able to fake the lunar missions is pretty outlandish.
So here's the thing: what I hate about government officials, and this is, they just dismiss you as crazy. What did they do with the stolen election in 2020? They dismissed us as crazy. What did they do with COVID? They dismissed us as crazy. What did they do with the COVID vaccine, which we're now getting real information that this is a cancer spreader? They dismissed us as crazy. What did they do with the Russian collusion situation? And we said there's no way President Trump was involved in this. Now totally debunked. They dismissed us as crazy. Here you go, all the way back to, I don't know when this documentary was done. Probably the 1990s, it looks like. Maybe early 2000s. They're dismissing you as crazy. There's no blast pattern underneath the lunar lander. Do you see the heat coming out of it? Well, where is it? Can't NASA say there's no blast pattern because bop, 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 and give us an explanation? There's no stars, as the other woman said, because the aperture had to be wide open, and it's black when you open the aperture up so you could shoot these subjects on the moon surface. Fine, that's a plausible explanation as to why there's no stars. But then when you think about it, so you didn't bring a telescope, you bring golf clubs and a dune buggy, but you don't bring a telescope to the moon. Of course you would.
As outlandish as it might seem, it has been estimated that as many as 20% of Americans believe we never went to the moon. But how could anyone think that one of the greatest moments in human history is a hoax? Is it really possible that NASA deceived the world? According to a former astronaut,
I'm going to play a little more of this for you. I think it is possible. The more I look at this stuff, the more I believe maybe we didn't actually go to the moon. Oh man, I can't believe it that this is the conclusion I'm coming to. But it is, as I watch my own podcast real time. Watch it. Lay it out for you. I mean, seriously. Wow. Hey folks, Patriot Mobile. You know I love these guys. Where's my phone? This is my iPhone. Patriot Mobile is the service provider for it. PatriotMobile.com/Grant. They're America's only Christian conservative wireless provider. This is about a parallel economy. This is about supporting a company that believes in the things that we do, that puts their money where their mouth is and supports programs like this, charities like Folds of Honor, the NRA. They do not support places like Planned Parenthood, like the other big cell phone companies do. They push back against that stuff. And here's the great thing. You choose what network you want to be on. So if you're on this AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, whatever, you choose which one you want to be on. You're not going to lose that service, and what you're going to gain is 100% U.S.-based customer service. Patriot Mobile is fabulous. Man, the people behind it, the people that work there, fabulous. We owe it to them to back them up, and you do that by simply switching your service to them. Please do it today. I'm asking you. I don't beg, but I would beg you for Patriot Mobile because I like these guys. 972-PATRIOT, that's the number, 972-PATRIOT. Use the promo code GRANT for a free month service. PatriotMobile.com/Grant is the website you can go to. PatriotMobile.com/Grant. And again, there you can use the promo code GRANT. You're going to get big savings with that first month service. You're going to love these folks. Don't wait anymore. Just do it. And then be part of Stinchfield's army and say, you know what, your cell phone service provider is the official service provider of Stinchfield's army. PatriotMobile.com/Grant, 972-PATRIOT. Tell them Grant Stinchfield sent you. All right, a little bit more just because I love it. I really do.
It's entirely possible
Regarding the Apollo mission, I can't say 100% for sure whether these men walked on the moon.
That's an astronaut. That's a NASA astronaut saying that.
Brian O'Leary was a NASA astronaut in the 1960s and served as a science advisor during the Apollo moon missions.
It's possible that NASA could have covered it up just in order to cut corners and to be the first to allegedly go to the moon.
Was getting to the moon first so important that our government would consider faking it? To find the answer, we have to go back 40 years, to a time when America and the Soviets were locked in a struggle for world domination.
People assumed that the nation that won the space race would win the Cold War. We defined that as being first to the moon. It was a time of more or less national hysteria.
On October 4th, 1957, the Soviets terrified America when they sent Sputnik, the world's first satellite, into orbit.
The New York Times had to publish an article explaining to Americans that it did not carry nuclear bombs that could be dropped on the city from that altitude.
The American public's fear of nuclear annihilation intensified as Russia took the lead in the space race.
House Speaker announced in Congress that we may be headed for extinction.
Many feared that the Soviet Union's ultimate goal was to put a missile base on the moon. Meanwhile, America's space program was having difficulty even getting off the ground.
The chances of getting to the moon and returning safely to Earth were something like 0.0017%. In other words, virtually an impossibility.
But think about it. 0.0017%. Even if it's 1%, which it's not, 0.017, whatever he's saying here, is minuscule. And you're telling me we did it at a time when we got rockets blowing up left and right. We're not able to even get off the ground, and yet somehow we figure it out to make this happen at the very time when, in order to make it happen, is to put Russia on the ropes when it comes to the Cold War and the space race and the race for intercontinental ballistic missiles and rocket science and all of this stuff. America wins. Well, maybe we won because Hollywood wins. Maybe this is when Hollywood and the government started working so closely together. I don't know. It's not out of reach. It's not.
What actually happened in my mind is that during the 60s, they said, if you can't make it, fake it.
But if the Apollo missions were fake, how was this monumental hoax accomplished? According to Casing, the launch of Apollo's Saturn V rocket was real. It just never sent astronauts to the moon.
The astronauts were launched with the Saturn V. Then, in order to account for their disappearance, they simply orbited the Earth for 8 days. And in the interim, they showed these fake pictures of the astronauts on the moon. But on the 8th day, the command capsule separated from the vehicle and descended to Earth, as of course was shown in films.
This theory inspired the 1978 movie Capricorn 1, in which the government attempts to fool the world by faking a mission to Mars.
All right, so you get the point through all of it. I mean, again, comms were great. I can't get a cell phone service out of Dallas on certain corners. Yet you got Richard Nixon talking to the astronauts over the telephone. And then, I don't know, I'm going to go back to this, just let you see it one more time, because this to me says a lot.
Will you put your left hand on the Bible and swear to God that you walked on the moon?
Gentlemen. Mr. Seibel.
Yes? If you really walked on the moon, why would you not do that? So why don't you just put the end to the record in the argument and put your hand on the Bible, swear to God you walked on the moon?
Mr. Seibel, knowing you, that's probably a fake Bible.
Really? Well, no, it's the real Bible. You have the opportunity to have $5,000.
The meeting is not open.
Well, you have $5,000.
So he won't do it. He refuses to put his hand on the Bible. I believe that was Neil Armstrong, and he hasn't done any interviews, never did, about it. So all of that is strange, to say the least. I got one more piece of evidence. Now, it's not about the moon. It's about a 1966 space program that aired on CBS News. I'm going to show it to you in just a moment. I'm going to leave it with you, this one little piece of evidence, because it's pretty darn funny. But before I do, folks, remember the Wellness Company. Not upside down. The Wellness Company. These are prescription medications. Prescription medications designed to keep you and your family safe. You know, the drugstores can have shortages. We've seen that. Cyber attacks, drugstores shut down. We know there's the other situation where, God forbid, you have a terrorist attack or a natural disaster, drugstores shut down. This means you have prescription medications that can save a life on hand. Antivirals, antiparasitics, antibiotics right here in this kit. The most common ones from amoxicillin to ivermectin. To help you battle back COVID or wherever else might come about. They got this field kit that I love. This is waterproof. This is the mother of all of the TWC health kits. TWC.health/grant. That's the website to get one of these kits. Use the promo code GRANT for 10% off. You're not prepared if you don't have prescription medications. I'm just going to say it. We live in some tumultuous times. You want to be prepared. Do I think there'll be a zombie apocalypse? No. Do I think we'll have a natural disaster or, God forbid, a terrorist attack or something bad happen or a cyber attack that shuts some of these things down? Yes, which is why I'm ready. I have food, I have ammunition, I have water, I have power, and I have prescription medications. TWC.health/grant. Use that promo code GRANT. Okay, folks, what do you think? This is a, let me get this off the screen. This is a CBS News report. There's no way this is real. There is no way.
Radio command link. Actually, it's a link along that tether line you see there, 25 feet of umbilical cord. That contains the life support system and communications link. From the spacecraft life support system out through that chest pack.
I'm calling bullcorn. I really am. Bullshit. I'm just going to say it. Bullshit. There is no freaking way.
That contains the life support system and communications.
It's about as crude as it gets. Anyway, I'll leave you with that. Folks, this was an interesting one. I've never really actually done something like this. We'll see how it does. Please subscribe to the channel. You can do that. Rumble channel. Download the app if you're watching on Rumble. The Rumble app is fabulous. Download it and please subscribe. Grant Stinchfield, of course, and then Stinchfield 1776 on just about all the social media platforms. The website has all the podcasts there as well. You can get to all of them. And then you can sign up for the email list. Speaking of emergencies, if God forbid I ever need to get in touch with you, that's what the email list is for. In case we get canceled, in case you say, what happened? Or we had this happen, and I didn't have the email list to get in touch with you. So this is what that's about. GrantStinchfield.com, GrantStinchfield.com. God bless all of you. Stinchfield's Army rolls because of you. We will see you on the Real America's Voice show tonight, 6 p.m. Central Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time on Real America's Voice. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you soon.